Hey guys, it's Beth. Today I'm using this sign from Dollar Tree, and it was just sign I had left over from Easter. You can use any sign really with that rounded top. I sprayed the paper with water and let it sit, and then just scraped it off. Once I had the paper removed, I painted it with just one coat of Sandstone chalk paint, just on one side, and then dried that completely. Once that was completely dry, I took Kelly green acrylic paint and kind of made a wavy line on the bottom. Once I had my line made, then I filled in the rest of that space underneath it with the same color. And then I did the same thing above that section with a lighter color, and it's Wedgwood green acrylic paint. And I kind of just went along the same shape that I had for the previous line. Once I had my line made, I filled in that area with that color. And I did 2 coats on both of those. After I had those dry, I went with a bright red acrylic paint and a smaller paintbrush and just went along that light green edge at first, and then filled in the rest of the sign, that whole top area, with that color. And that I did 2 coats as well. Then I took this Hello Summer stencil I got from Amazon, and I'm not using the watermelon part from it. I'm using this hello part and then the summer part. So once I had it taped down where I wanted it, I took white acrylic paint and a stencil brush with very little paint on it at a time and stenciled in those letters. After I had the first coat on, I dried it and then did another coat. Then I removed the stencil, dried that completely, and then I took a small paintbrush and the same white paint and filled in the lines left by the stencil. And then I had dried that again and then took the summer word, placed that where I wanted it, taped it down, and stenciled on the same way. Next, I took the same white paint and a small paintbrush, went along each of the lines for that green paint, just lightly brushing on some white paint, and then took a baby wipe and blended it in. And then I took this black paint marker and just drew on some teardrop shapes for the little watermelon seeds. And then I went with the white acrylic paint again and just kind of lightly drew some little lines on one side of each of the teardrop shapes. Next, I took this stir stick I got from Amazon, cut it in about a 6-inch section, painted that with khaki color acrylic paint on both sides. And then after I had it dry, I kind of wanted it to have a rounder shape on the bottom. So I took these pruning shears and just cut one of the ends more rounded and sanded it. And then touched up the paint on that as well. And then after I had that dry, I took the edge of my paintbrush and just brushed on some black acrylic paint. And then lightly brushed on some white acrylic paint next to that black paint, just on one side. And then I took different styles of ribbon and fabric, pinched them in the center, and held them in my hand where I had it pinched, crisscrossed them back and forth, holding it nice and tight, and just alternated different styles until I had it nice and full. The pieces I used, I cut probably about 7 inches. Just kept crisscrossing them until I had it completely full, and I also used this mesh ribbon from Dollar Tree that gives it a really neat look. Once I had it to the fullness I wanted, I took some twine and wrapped it around the center, keeping it nice and tight in the center, and pulled that knot really tight, and then cut off the excess. And then I flipped it over and pulled apart and separated and lifted forward all of the ribbons and fabric and trimmed up pieces that were too long. Next, I added some hot glue onto the straight part of that craft stick and hot glued it to the back of my sign, just as a little popsicle stick. And then I placed in some black and white twine, tied it in a couple knots in the front, trimmed up the excess twine, and then did the same thing on the other side. Last thing I did was hot glue down my messy bow. And that is it for this project. I love how it turned out. Thank you guys so much for watching.